We're gonna go to Dietrich in. It went away. In Connecticut. Pronouns are he, him, and wants to discuss. I'm sorry, my screen's cut off, so I'm gonna ask Dietrich to just tell me, and then if I messed up your name, you'll also tell me that. So.
You said my name perfectly.
Awesome.
I've had people call me Dieter. I've had people call me, oh God, it was Dimitri one time. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Throughout the whole younger years of my life, every single adult would get it wrong. But funnily enough, recently, nobody's gotten it wrong.
Well,
that's good.
You're on the Truman Show. Everyone knows you. It's just you're just now finding out. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. So what did you want to talk about?
Yeah. So I've been wanting to call in for a while now. I used to be an atheist, but and I know this is by no means concrete proof, but I had a dream where Freya appeared to me, and I kind of inherently knew multiple things about what Freya is said to be that I didn't know prior, and like I looked it up later, and like there were many things that I just somehow got right in that dream. And since then, I have made indirect contact with Surtur, a Jotun, and just wanted to talk, just wanted to say hi, because I want
to pass it to
Atheist Experience.
Yeah, I want to start off with Jim, and have Jim field this at first. But maybe Jim might have a similar kind of like. There's stuff that I don't know about the character. Sorry, I don't want to be rude, but I don't know what you're referencing. Freya's familiar, but because of music,
Freya is one of the Norse pantheon. But I guess the question I have is, what makes you think the dream was real?
So, like I said, it's by no means concrete. I'm not going to go out of my way like most theists do to convert people, because I quite honestly don't care. It just makes me feel good. In my personal thinking on it is that none of the gods are truly concrete beings. I believe it's more of there is a version of each god for every person in their individual beliefs.
Well, so that just kind of begs the question, if every restaurant is Taco Bell, is there any other restaurant? I mean, if every color is blue, is there any other color? I mean, do other colors exist? It just doesn't make any sense to me to say everybody has a personal God. That to me is like saying there are no gods, right? And there is no difference.
Let me clarify that. For people who believe in a God, none of those people are going to truly believe in the same God, because at the end of the day, the structure of every religion is inherently subjective.
But that's not true of people, right? Like there are currently multiple versions of JMike, but there's only one real JMike. But we don't have that same thing. Dr. Ben and I do not have different beliefs of who JMike is. We know who he is, right? I mean, we're looking at the same person with the same traits. So if that doesn't work with people, then how does it work with God? Why does it work that way with gods?
The reason is because we have no proof that gods even exist on this plane of existence.
Is it rational to believe in things that you can't prove exist?
God.
Is it rational to believe in things that don't exist?
I actually agree on that point. It is not rational.
But then why do you hold the belief? I'm just confused.
Yeah. So why are you being irrational then?
It really makes me feel better.
Well, so would doing heroin, but you know.
Yeah, exactly. But also, like, I don't know, like, I guess I get weirded out here on this, like, makes me feel better stuff that people say, because it's like, part of me is like, yeah, I do think that people believe stuff because it makes them feel better, but also, like, I don't think people are, like, choosing beliefs, so there's, like, a reason. Is it just, like, you get this feeling and that, like, pushes you over thinking it's true? Because, like, my brain really struggles at, like, how I could hold a proposition as more likely to be true than false off of, like, how it makes me feel. Like, because, like, I imagine, like, if I just thought of the consequence of some view, like, oh, if determinism is true, then, like, you know, people will bring up this, like, how are we morally responsible? And let's just assume that's, like, a valid criticism. It's like, I really don't care about an appeal to the consequence. I care about what's true, right? So, like, I'm wired a little bit differently. Like, is it really something that's just makes you feel better? That makes you believe the proposition is true? I'm like skeptical on how that even works. Like, how you could just be happier and accept a proposition as opposed to, like, having a reason to believe it.
For me, I just believe it. I chalk it up to me feeling good, but human minds are they're naturally drawn to irrationality, I feel.
But do you think that belief is subject to the will? Do you think you can just will to believe something?
I cannot will to believe something. That's not. I've heard.
Yeah, so I want to, like, dig into, like, but I want to dig into what reason gives you to think that it's actually true, right? Because, like, I think of things that I know aren't true that make me feel better. I'm, like, really struggling on this part, like, of how you go from.
At the end of the day, I don't really have a reason. It's just things that I cannot explain, and for me personally, that seems like the most rational reason for what I have experienced that cannot be explained.
So what would have happened if you had had a dream about a frost giant telling you to do something, or just a frost giant in general, or I'm trying to remember the pantheon better. I believe Odin that was Zeus who defeated his father. The stories are so convoluted sometimes. But I mean, what makes, I come back to.
Is very convoluted.
Yeah, well, it's because they're made up stories. If it was history, it'd be less convoluted.
Like the Bible.
Pardon?
Yeah, just like the Bible. Every religion I've seen has been based on just stories.
So why do you believe this story about Freya being true? I mean, a dream does not seem like sufficient good evidence to warrant belief. Feeling good is a temporary thing, right? I mean, if you just want to feel good, then there are a number of ways that you could do that. So it just seems like you've latched onto this thing for no particular reason, and it doesn't seem rational.
It seems to be on a par with any other beliefs that you don't believe in.
I don't worship. I don't do anything for these gods because I don't have any proof that they're real.
I don't think Jim's worried about the stuff that you do. It's getting to the attitude that the proposition is true, right? A belief, right? Like, because
at the end of the day, I don't have a reason for why I believe it's true because I can't control what I believe.
Okay, but try this, and you look around, and you see Christians. You agree that do you think that view is false, like a Trinitarian? You know, I am these three things. I'm like 3-in-1 shampoo. Like, do you think that view? Because I think that view is, like, clearly false. Like, what's your take on that view?
I don't think any religion is inherently false to believe in a
Okay.
God.
What's something that you think is false?
Because it's what's something I think is false?
Yes.
Justifying the things that many people justify by only justifying it by religion.
Well, I'm talking about like something that is like a statement, like okay, so presumably you've walked outside, you thought it was raining, and you go outside and it turned out to not be raining, so you know that proposition was not true, it was false, right? Or like as you update your belief. Presumably you've been in a situation where you're like, oh, I was wrong about that thing, right? That's happened to you, right?
Yeah. If
yeah.
I was
given what happens in that mental, what happens in that, hold on, I'm trying to, just real quick, I'm not trying to be rude, I just want to get to this point, that when you do that, when you go like, I was wrong, I no longer believe that, or like, oh, I thought it was this case, now it's this case, right? What you're doing is there's a reason, right? There's something that's pushing you over on that, but like, I'm struggling to see, like, if you say you don't have a reason, how could you be pushed to accepting the proposition, right? Because like, imagine I walked outside the door and I have like no reason to change have no reason to think that it isn't raining. I wouldn't update my belief. I just continue, right? So that's why I'm like, how is it even possible for you to be pushed to affirming a proposition as opposed to just saying, hey, I don't know if the jar of pennies is even or odd. I'm not going to take an opinion on either one of those, which is like what a lot of the hosts on this show's position is, right? They're going, look, I can't make a reason that way or the other. So I don't know why you wouldn't be more epistemically humble and just go with well, I don't have reason, so I shouldn't accept the proposition to be true.
Let me put it this way. Okay. I was given a new piece of evidence for a hypothesis that I have basically nothing on. I have formed my personal belief on the scarce amount of evidence that I have. That
evidence is a dream. How is a dream evidence of anything?
Because so it's a little bit more than just the dream. It's the fact that I inherently knew of the properties of Freya when I hadn't beforehand.
So how do you know that you didn't know it beforehand? Because Freya is popular in mythology, right?
Mentioned Freya.
The D&D books, the old ones, the first edition ones, got a lot of the gods and their characteristics correct for a lot of the pantheons. Freya and Thor and the rest have been popular in movies. I mean, it's all over the place. So how do you know you haven't actually encountered that before?
Because I haven't seen any information on Freya. I haven't seen like there is a single character in a video game I play that I quite like. Her name is Freya. That does not make her the same as the goddess.
No,
Freya.
But again, I'm just pointing out that how you can't actually show me or demonstrate to me that you haven't come across information on Freya ever. And I would be surprised if that was true, given the prevalence of the Asgardian pantheon, given the movies and everything else that is out right now on that, and how long the comic books have been out for Thor. It just seems a little odd that you have never encountered that before. And then just because something fits a pattern does not necessarily make it true. We're pattern-seeking creatures. So, I mean, we can even go into that a little bit, but you can't guarantee you haven't seen it just because you don't remember it, right?
That's a fair point. But at the end of the day, what I have is a meager, very meager amount of evidence for this hypothesis. And I have formed whatever semblance of a belief that I can off of this hypothesis.
Why? What makes that rational to do? Yeah. What makes that rational to do?
I never claimed it was rational.
So you're okay with you performing irrational actions like accepting a belief without sufficient good evidence?
Yeah, I think it's like worse than that too. It's like it's like you're reporting to us, hey, I desire to not get wet. The umbrella right next to the door will protect me. I intend to not get wet. And I believe if I stand outside the house without the umbrella, I will get wet. And then you turn and look at me and Jim and just walk out the door. Right? Like you've reported us things that you hold and then just like did it anyway. So it's like the analogy I'm trying to draw is it's like you're telling us that you agree it's like irrational, or you agree that like I don't have this reason there. And so it just seems like equivalent as being like you're reporting all this stuff. So we're expecting what you're supposed to do is grab the umbrella and protect yourself. Right. And the analogy there being like what we're expecting you to do is go, okay, yeah, I don't have a reason to really believe this. There doesn't exist one. And it would be irrational for me to continue holding the belief. So I should just be agnostic on the proposition, or reserve judgment, or whatever word you want to use to reserve judgment there.
So what I have is a tentative faith. I'm never going to go out and do something based on this faith.
No, I'm not even getting there. I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but like when we say something, you kind of will go to this other like potential entailment from your beliefs. Like right now you're going to like actions that you can commit, but we're not there yet. It's like, it's hard to keep focused on the point we're at, which is why ought you hold this belief, given that you've already told us that like you don't have good sufficient evidence or reason to believe it. Nonetheless, you still believe it. I can't move on to any peripheral concern you have about the belief because none of that matters because the belief shouldn't be held to begin with, right? So I'm not like all the other kind of peripheral stuff. I just will frankly tell you, I don't care about it. I just don't. It'd be just a waste of your time. The thing I care about is if whether or not you can take the things you've told us, like you have all the pieces there, the same way in the example of that person has reported to us that they believe they'll get wet, they desire to not get wet, and they know umbrellas protect them, but they nonetheless go outside and get wet, right? We can't go anywhere else about who manufactures the umbrellas and what they're going to go get for lunch. We have to focus on why that scenario happened and why you're not recognizing that that's irrational. Or why, when you recognize it's irrational, why you're not updating your belief. That's what a good skeptic or a good reasoner would do. This is what poor reasoners would do.
I would update my belief if I had any other evidence than what I have now.
Wait, hold on.
You have all of the evidence that for any definition of Freya, that there is no evidence that that's actually true, right? I mean, you could go and perform whatever ceremony you wanted to for Freya to put $1 million in your account or whatever it is, and that would not happen. We know that the supernatural, as for the last 2,000 years, there's been no evidence of the supernatural for any natural claim ever made, right? We've always found natural explanations for every phenomenon.
That's not true, Jim. We have the armchair.
The armchair?
Yeah, we can just sit in the armchair and think, and God will come to us.
Right.
We have the armchair. It's a beautiful armchair. But that's all right.
Yeah. So why would you accept that all of a sudden you have a supernatural being?
I don't believe it's a supernatural being. I believe it's not something.
If it's not supernatural, how is it communicating to you through a dream?
Being, but it doesn't have any power more than the individual.
So how is it communicating to you through a dream? Because communicating through dreams isn't something that we can do.
It's more like Freya is part of my subconscious.
Okay, but then it's stance dependent. It's dependent on your attitudes and stuff like that. So it's not stance independent, and that's fine. No one. Okay, but then there isn't a substantive disagreement between me, you, or Jim. We're not going to disagree that things happen in your brain and that you see these things. I had them happen to me. I had a weird dream that I was like had a trivia host like asking me questions about like 80s bands like Air Supply and Duran Duran and stuff, and I was like, I don't listen to them. I don't even know how that happened, or I don't listen to them at all, but like my brain does weird things, right? But I would report those things to you and be like, well, but then it's like not substantive, because like you wouldn't disagree that like if I was telling you the truth that there really was this like trivia host in my dream that was speaking to me. But like that's not like, no one's going to disagree that happens. The only person that's going to disagree with that is people that go, I don't think dreams occur, right? Then we have like a substantive disagreement on whether or not like people actually have these mental representations. But me and Jim are not going to dispute the fact that you have these mental representations or processing in your brain. If that's it, then there's no substantive dispute between us. But I would just say you don't believe in some stance independent thing. You and that's fine. If that gives you comfort, I don't see anything wrong with that. But I just don't detect there's any substantive disagreement. Yeah. I don't know how many more times I can say substantive disagreement, but I'll say it 3 more times. Substantive disagreement, substantive disagreement, substantive disagreement. All right, sorry.
But why call something that is a product of your brain a god? Why call it a god? Why not just call it a figment of your imagination?
Yeah.
It's like how we just assign words to other things. Even in science, we assign labels to things. It may
yes, but when science, they have very specific definitions for everything they label, which is why sometimes it's hard to translate between science speak and what we normal humans speak, right? Because they're using words in very specific ways, even though like if you get into the quantum realm, they're using words from poems and other things to describe things, right? They're just reassigning, but they mean very specific things. So, but you're not. You're just taking this word God that has a very specific definition and you're applying it to a figment of your imagination. I'm just wondering why.
I just chose the word God because that's what Freya falls under in the colloquial definition. That's just why I chose that.
But you see how
once
that's
again, no real reason.
And it seems like it comes with baggage to do that. Like if I said what I mean by the bank is not a financial institution or river bank, but like a guitar, you'd be like, okay, well, it was a little confusing that you used bank. Like I typically know bank to be like a financial institution or like a river bank. So when you use that term, it's not like we're not doing. Yeah. Well, and that might help you just in the future, but it's not like you did anything wrong. It's that word use. There's not like correct word usage or term usage, right? That's like I'm not a prescriptivist, but what we can do is like find out what you mean by those terms, and it turns out like what I mean by bank here is guitar, and it's like, oh, well, me and Jim don't disagree that there are guitars, and that's what seems like what just happened was like, well, you're saying this thing God or Freya and all this, and then it turns out to be something that we agree with, this stance-dependent mental representation that you experience. Yeah. We 100% agree with that. That's fine, but that would just be equivalent to the bank scenario where like someone's like, I believe in guitars, and I call them banks, and I'm like, say I'm skeptical of banks for some reason, and then they're just like, okay, well, I believe guitars, because that's fine. But anyway, I think that's probably a good place. Spend a little bit long, nothing against you, but a little bit longer than I wanted to go so we can get to other callers, but I do appreciate your call.